United, ready to fly. Batman and Robin, we took to the streets, chasing the shadows where justice meets. From Calgary to Ottawa, our fight never fades, taking down the villains in our own crusades. Whose street? Our street. Nazi scum off our streets. Southern Ontario, our battleground. Protests and rallies, the truth we found. Politicians, Antifa, our foes in the night. Gotham spirit in our hearts, the fight. Facing the darkness, we stood tall. In the name of justice, answering the call. With fire in our hearts, we took them down. In the streets of Canada, we wore the crown. Federal elections, the stakes were high. David Lynn's arrest, preaching in the sky. Church Street in the GTA, the scene was...
Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, grannies, gators, friends, family, prisoners, patriots, and hostages too. It is Tuesday, October 28th, and yes, Mark Carney, or actually Brookfield, strikes again. Who'd have thunk after doing such a deep expose on the pattern of corruption of Mark Carney's holding company, that we would be right back in the thick of it again today. But we're going to have an announcement coverage on that as to what happened today in those regards. But the level of corruption in Canada is absolutely off the hook, and it's not just Mark Carney's unethical conflicts of interest. It's all of them, as we heard again last night from the former CSIS agents, and so many other different lenses of seeing the truth. But where it's leaving us is basically in an economic bloodbath, and it's you, me, we, us, the Canadian civilian that is the permanent victims of it. The transfer of wealth that's been going on since COVID, since the Liberals came back into power, is just unheard of. And really, when last night I really had to think about the stuff that we covered in last night's show, and the level of wealth being transferred is primarily to America. And that's not saying Trump is bad. That's saying our leadership is bad, and it's staggering. It's an economic bloodbath, right? The more we see and learn, the worse it gets for Canadians. And America keeps coming up roses, which is what you voted for. I got no animosity towards Americans when it comes to this, but I have an extreme animosity and contempt for our own Canadian government. And the more we see, it's getting easier and easier to believe and understand that actually probably Brookfield controls Canada through Mark Carney. And Brookfield, 91% of it is American interests. So America is getting richer, while Mark Carney is absolutely making Canada poorer. And we're literally a duped society built on too much trust, and it's allowing a full speed self-destruction apparatus, and we're being led around by our noses, emotional responses and triggers, while basically remaining oblivious to reality. And it's unfortunate. The more I learn, the less I want to believe it, but the harder it is to dismiss it, right? So if you're new here, welcome back. Welcome to the community. We have a community, not an audience. If you're not new here, you know what to do. Smash that thumbs up and give this a share. Help us try and beat the algorithms in any way, shape, or form. I was talking with some folks that I had done a show with them 4 years ago, And immediately after that show, I interviewed a group of people on the show here from a small town in Alberta. And after that, immediately after that show, Facebook basically ruined them, right? And it extended right into their communities. And this is something that I find highly disturbing. I had suspected for a long time that association with this platform can be a detriment to people, and that's unnerving to me. That's the last thing on earth that I intended through what I do here, but it's kind of the unfortunate reality. They couldn't shut me up. They use this platform to target others outside of it. Uh, the psyop games are incessant, and they just don't stop, right? So tonight's show is going to be significantly shorter. I've been dealing with a massive headache all day today, so there's not going to be a 4-hour marathon today on stuff, but we're still going to chew on a bunch of the insanity that's going on and look at the big announcement for Brookfield today from the White House. So just before we get started, remind folks, get plugged in over on Substack, whatsupcanada.substack.com. Last night's show did not make it up on Substack as of yet. I could barely keep my eyes open to look at the computer most of the day today. So it was I just couldn't get it done, but it'll make it up there. All of the links and everything that I use in a show eventually makes it to Substack, and everything I do is always free. You can find it at whatsupcanada.substack.com. And if you can't remember that, remember whatsupcanada.org. All right, the gremlins are already here. Maybe that's a good reason to keep it a little bit shorter tonight, but yeah, you can find Substack right here in the center of the page. Subscribe on Substack. You can go up and you can find our partners, Bryce at New World Precious Metals and the Switch with Wayne Army as well. I know that there's a few people that have joined the team this month. Congratulations on getting involved in a different level of the fight back against those who seek to destroy and control us. Excited for what you're going to be able to learn and discover, and hopefully take full advantage of, right? So, all right, where are we going to start today? We're going to start. Most of my clips tonight are really short ones, guys. So we're still going to be covering a lot of little things, but we're going to start off today with this clip. That's kind of an absolute reality.
Canada burnt the bridges with America. Donald Trump did not slam the door. Canada slammed that door shut all by itself.
It comes as Statistics Canada numbers show the Canadian economy contracted for the first time in more than a year.
And they're 100% right. Canadians, our leadership, our electorate, or our elected have done this 100%. And it comes from a sense of greed and corruption. The difference between our prosperity and our demise is corruption. And that corruption has been hell-bent for leather for decades and decades and decades. I don't know how many different ways I can expose that. And we still have the majority of people that are out there talking about vote harder, baby. The conservatives will get them next time. And I don't have any faith in that at this point in time. And I'm not the most optimistic of individuals today, coming to the stark realization that I don't think it's possible to save our country at this point, because it is so close to imploding that it's absolutely inevitable that it's going to balkanize. And this was one of my greatest fears. I talked about this for years. Canada is going to separate and into multiple parts, and that's done from a sense of self-preservation. The territories and provinces are going to claim their own sovereignty at some point here, because the insanity of what appears to be Canada, the landmass formerly known as Canada, it's insane, and it's absolutely unsustainable. Insanity is unsustainable, and right now what we're seeing, I believe, is Mark Carney basically acting as a clearinghouse to create the problems that create the environment for the opportunity for Brookfield, not for Canadians, but for Brookfield, right? Uh, so that's kind of where we're at here right now, and I don't see anything changing in that aspect at any point in time in the near future. I don't think that conservatives in Canada will ever vote again in a capacity that will unseat the Liberals, right? And I was talking about this with somebody the other day. It's us as conservative individuals that refuse to take part in the intellectual dishonesty that's required to maintain the electorate system. Starberry, I haven't seen you for a while. I think you sent me a letter or a card through letter mail. Is it Starberry? Trying to been waiting to see you, Star Raven. If anybody sees Star Raven, let her know that I did get a card and gift that she sent me. So I haven't seen her around for a while. But yeah, we're in trying to hold people to account. See, here's the problem. As conservatives, we want to hold both sides to account. The Liberals, they don't. They will only hold conservatives to account. So they will continue to play the charade of intellectual dishonesty, whatever it takes to make their hive win. And conservatives don't want to don't want the lesser of the evils, so they just choose not to vote. So as we wake up more and more people, there is less and less people that are going to be willing to vote conservatives, knowing that they're a party to the same system. The corruption never ends. We heard it again from Michelle Juno Katsuya and Gary Clementi again last night. And that the corruption is not limited to Carney and the Liberals. All parties have been compromised and corrupted, aka treasonous, going back to Brian Mulroney, right? So I don't know how we overcome that when the only awesome, Mike. I don't know how we overcome that without having an actual representative of the people's voice in the party. And the parties are sworn to maintain the continuity of the syndicate. Whoever controls that syndicate, that could be up for debate, whether it's the Crown or the King or the EU or China, or at this point, maybe it's America. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we are not on the conservative side of the fence supporting the charade any longer. And that makes it, at the end of the day, almost inevitable that it's going to take less and less corruption to maintain the plausibility or pretend that Mark Carney or the Liberals actually win every election from here to eternity, because there's no alternative. It's uniparty or nothing, right? So more and more conservatives are choosing nothing. So it's a discouraging scenario that we find ourselves in. And as Canadians, I'm becoming stronger. Yeah, free falling. Absolutely, Nikki. We are free falling, right? Right. So I don't even really know where to start with today's nonsense. It's kind of a little bit jumbled up, my show today. Not quite the in-depth stuff that I usually pull together for everybody. So I'm going to start with this little lecture. It's about 2 minutes long. Many of you guys will have seen this already, but it'll plant the seed, which will kind of set the tone for more of what we're going to hear tonight on the unsustainable insanity and how Canada, we're doing this to ourselves at the end of the day. And it's not willingly. I'm not saying that Canadians are willfully Canadians aren't willfully doing it, but they're being pulled apart, ripped apart, divided, wedge issues, manufactured crisis, destabilization. We're going to talk a little bit about George Soros's greatest success in Canada a little bit later on. But this lecture really hits the nail on the head as to why we tend to be doing this to ourselves.
You there, second desk, blue jacket. What is your name?
My name is Alexis.
Alexis, please leave my lecture room. I don't want to see you, one of my lectures, ever again.
I don't understand.
I am not going to ask a second time. Thank you. Why are there laws? What are laws for? Anyone?
Social order?
To protect the person's personal rights.
So that you can rely on the government?
Justice? Thank you. Tell me, was I unfair to your classmate just now? Indeed I was. So, why didn't any of you protest? Why didn't any of you try and stop me? Why didn't you want to prevent this injustice? You see, what you have just learnt, you wouldn't have understood in 1,000 hours of lectures unless you lived it. You didn't say anything because you weren't affected yourself. And this attitude speaks against you and against life. You think it doesn't concern you, so it's none of your business. Well, I'm here to say, if you don't help bring about justice, then one day you too may experience injustice. And there will be nobody there to stand before you.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is where we are at in Canada. That is exactly where we are here in Canada. For too long, if it didn't affect people, they wouldn't get involved. And now we're at a point where there is nobody to stand for us, right? And it's not, like I said, it's not it's not conscious, intentional malice. That isn't it at all. It's not it at all. And we're going to be covering some of those injustices here in a moment, but I've got a clip here from Carla Joy Treadway next who kind of hits the nail on the head.
Canadians, you are being propagandized. And elbows up, Canadians, I'm speaking specifically to you. You, Canada, you are not a victim. Stop acting like a victim. You are not a victim to Trump. Every single problem that we have in this country right now, you have voted for. We are allowing to happen. And all of these problems, they existed before Trump. We were at the bottom of the G7 before Trump. We broke our immigration system before Trump. Our healthcare issues, the hallway medicine, before Trump. All of these things. Now, you are being propagandized. I need to remind you because an election might be around the corner and they're doubling down on these things right now. That attack ad, putting an attack ad in the US, was not just stupid, spending $75 million to put an attack ad in the US. That was not just stupid by meathead Dougie Ford. That was intentional. You don't think Mark Carney knew that Doug Ford was going to put that ad out? Why would they do that in the middle of trade negotiations? And I understand you're playing victim right now and you don't want to take accountability for your own actions and you want elbows up, you want to fight dirty, when actually what you need to do is to be diplomatic. And that was a stupid move. And I don't think these people are actually stupid. I think that was very intentional. Why would they make him mad? Because hatred for Trump is the only thing that the Liberal government can do. That is the only playing card they have, because there is not one positive, tangible outcome from this administration from the last 10 years. Everything since switching over to Mark Carney has also gotten worse. Our tariffs, worse. He's flying around, having lots of conversations. Nothing has been done. Everything is continuing to get more expensive. We are not making the deals. And I'm sorry, it's a nice idea to just buy Canadian. Yeah, you should have been doing this the whole time. You vote with your dollars. But we can't just buy Canadian. Support local businesses, always, obviously. But 77% of our trade is with the United States. So they are lying to you when they say that you can just buy Canadian. They're lying to you when they say that, well, we'll make a new deal with Jamaica or a small European country. It's not going to happen. Yeah, we should be making new trade partnerships. It's going to take decades to replace what the US has with us. There is only one solution, and that is to make peace with the United States. And our Canadian MSN media keeps on just fanning the flames, just pissing them off even more. So that's option one. They're just gearing up for another election. They're trying to make Trump mad because it is the only card they have to play, is to scare the liberal boomers into thinking that the big bad Trump man is coming to take all of your money, right? So they're going to scare you. So that's the first thing that might be happening. The second thing that might be happening is actually Trump is in on it. Because if you look at Mark Carney's stock portfolio, you'll see that he's 91% invested in US companies. Trump is a businessman, and there's a very good chance that a lot of Mark Carney's investments might be linked to some of Trump's investments. And they both benefit by this situation. They both benefit by keeping the Liberals and Mark Carney in power. Just something to think about. Just something to think about. But at the end of the day, Canada, you are not a victim to an outside country. You are a victim, if anything, to your own government. But you voted for it. If you voted for this administration, you are responsible for the problems here. So stop pointing the finger across the border to the big orange bad man and start looking in the mirror, or the people that maybe you voted in.
Or that won because 60% of the population didn't bother to vote because they didn't see any point in it. And I 100% agree. Why would Donald Trump get in the way of Mark Carney? He's making bank off of everything Mark Carney does. And Mark Carney cannot serve Canadians and his shareholders because those are a conflict. They are 100% in conflict. And we tolerate it. And this is why we ourselves are at fault. Our silence in the voting booth, even if it is a corrupt system that is the agreed upon system, nobody's changing that. So if that is the only system, our silence is there consent? So, yeah, 100%. Even if, even if Mark Carney and Donald Trump don't have shared holdings, which I would be surprised if they did not, given that, Carney lent Trump $1 billion, or Trump's family $1 billion to pay rent. They actually have mutual interests. So Carney can't work for Canadians against his corporations. And this is the problem. In our silence, is there consent? Right? So I don't know, short of pulling a 1776, how we ever change that. And here's why I don't believe we can ever pull a 1776.
Over the past decade, Western society has undergone a major transformation that no culture before it ever has on this scale. The complete feminization of its values and institutions. We've become a culture that prizes inclusion over achievement, safety over risk, and feelings over facts. What once rewarded merit and results now rewards empathy and representation. And while that might sound harmless, it has reshaped how our schools, media, and courts actually function, or what might be better said as fail to function. This shift wasn't organic. It didn't happen because women simply outperformed men. It was the outcome of decades of social engineering, policies and laws that forced institutions to prioritize gender balance over competence. Anti-discrimination rules, affirmative action, and diversity mandates made it legally and socially dangerous to have too few women. As a result, hiring and promotion became less about performance and more about optics. Slowly, the culture of these institutions began to mirror the traits that were being rewarded. Psychologist Joyce Benenson helps explain these consequences. Men developed group dynamics suited for war, open conflict, quick resolution, and cooperation afterward. They fight, they reconcile, and then they move forward within that same framework. Women, by contrast, developed group dynamics suited for small communities, avoiding direct conflict, prioritizing group cohesion, and ensuring everyone participates. In male groups, the goal is to complete the task. In female groups, the goal is to make sure everyone is involved in the task. That difference now defines our society. Institutions no longer measure success by whether they fulfill their purpose, but by how harmonious and inclusive they appear. Universities care more about emotional comfort than the pursuit of truth. Newsrooms chase moral consensus instead of objective reporting, and our legal system is now guided by compassion rather than principle. The data tells the story. Law schools became majority female in 2016, medical schools in 2019, and the New York Times newsroom in 2018. Women made up 63% of the judges appointed by President Biden. As those institutions tipped demographically, they also tipped ideologically, away from conflict and merit toward consensus and emotion. The issue isn't women's capability, it's the mismatch between temperament and task. A feminized culture may be gentle and inclusive, but it's also indecisive and risk-averse. Civilization can't thrive if every decision must first be approved by an ideologically captured committee. Over the past decade,
that's kind of where we're at, right? Completely demasculated as a society, no capacity to resist or fight back. And in the meantime, the feminist movement has basically taken control, and they can argue till kingdom come comes and not achieve a resolution. It's not a knock against women. It's just ill-suited to the tasks, right? You don't have a team of Navy SEALs made up of women, right? You don't have a majority of midwives that are men. We're just not suited to the tasks in this complete inversion of our society, and the neutering of our masculinity has put us in a position where the men that would be willing to fight and make up afterwards, well, they keep their mouths shut, and they're society is more concerned with if it doesn't affect me, then that's not my concern, right? So up next, one of the biggest issues that I think is a is critical to this, and why one of the reasons why we'll never be able to dislodge or rebuke the Liberal Party is this level of control. Hear this.
Okay, so now's where it gets really scary. Now you're going to see just how much power the Senate has and how hard they can handcuff a federal government if we get a change in government in the next election. Of the 99 current sitting Canadian senators, how many were appointed by Justin Trudeau during his 10 years as Prime Minister?
Absolutely. Let me fix that up. So currently, out of the 99 sitting senators, a good chunk were indeed appointed by Justin Trudeau. The number is actually around 82 of them that he appointed during his time in office. So that should be the more accurate count. Thanks for catching that.
Okay, so, and I know that he...
82 of 99 are Trudeau appointees. Wonderful.
He chose, younger senators who are going to be in that role for a long period of time. Is it safe to say that the people who Justin appointed to the Senate will be in control of the Senate for at least the next 20 to 25 years? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair statement. I mean, since senators can serve until they're 75, and if he appointed a lot of younger senators, they're definitely going to be around influencing the Senate for a couple of decades. So yeah, it's reasonable to say that his appointees will have a long-lasting impact for the next 20.
Okay, and now I just want you to give me yes or no answers. Yes or no, does the Senate have the ability to cause delays for the federal government when they're trying to get bills passed and laws changed? Do they have the ability to cause significant delays for them?
Yes, absolutely. The Senate can definitely cause some significant delays for the federal government.
Does the Senate have the ability to stop new laws from passing, laws changing, bills passing, or bills to be repealed? Yes or no?
Yes, they do have that ability. They can stop or block bills, at least temporarily, from passing.
So it is a very conceivable argument to make that even if we see a conservative government in Canada after the next election, that the Senate could handcuff their ability to make any real change to the laws and bills that are currently governing this country. Yes or no?
Yes, exactly. It's definitely conceivable that a Senate with a majority of Trudeau appointees could slow down or limit a future conservative government's changes.
Thank you very much. So there you have it. Our friend Justin Trudeau and his merry band of idiots, they're not as dumb as we think. They didn't just set it up so that they were going to ruin the country with their agenda while they were in power, but they've stacked the Senate in a way that basically makes it almost impossible for a new government to undo the damage that they've done. Starting to understand why I'm becoming very passionate about Alberta separating? Might be the only way.
I think that's a very common understanding as to the situation that we're absolutely in. And I think that more people understand that than perhaps even what we might think. And that's absolutely going to be a driving force. And this is what I mean, guys, is I think we passed a point of no return to be able to save the Canada that we know and picture from coast to coast. So without a massive 1776 style of movement, Canada is hooped. Canada is hooped, and the Senate will make certain that there is no opportunity for change, because they are supposed to be the sober second thought, and absolutely will make sure that nothing changes outside of the agenda. So again, what alternative is there without a full-on 1776 or balkanizing as certain provinces and territories claim their own sovereignty as nation states, right? And listen to this clip from Mr. Remember having a brain fart on his name here at the moment, but Premier of Quebec.
It is the most important initiative by a federal government towards centralization that I have seen or.
Now, the federal government is centralizing, and Mark Carney is centralizing to America. He's not even trying to centralize the provinces into a Ottawa-controlled country. He's picking and choosing, manufacturing an environment for Brookfield to profit and take that to America's central government.
Heard of. I do not believe it is ill-intended. I believe that Mr. Carney sees himself culturally as the CEO of Canada. And he will make decisions, and he will have his decisions being implemented by everybody. And he seems to see that Quebec and provinces are merely region offices. And I'm not mad at him now, and I intend not to be. It is the way it works where he comes from. This is not the way it works in this place, and it is not the way it works within this federation, as terrible as it might be for us. So my plan is to do what I promised to do during the campaign when we started going up again. We will meet next week. We will discuss in complete serenity, and we will try, and I will try to find common grounds in order to work together, because the issue at the beginning of the campaign was the threat from Donald Trump. And in the speech, there's no such thing. It just vanished, disappeared. So we have to make it what it's supposed to be, adaptation for Quebec and Canada facing the threat from Mr. Trump.
My French colleagues were asking about, I believe, if I translate it right in my head, that you won't try to drop the government?
This is not the way I think about it at this point. The balance of power that we do hold is not in the chamber, because with the support of 3 NDP MPs, they could have this speech go through. Maybe the Conservatives, I don't know. In the committees, most of them, almost all of them, we hold the balance of power, because if Liberals and Conservatives are not in agreement, the vote that will make the difference is ours. So as many things as possible that would have to go through committees will command negotiation with the Bloc Québécois. This is why I said that we have more influence with 22 MPs than we had with 30.
So what do you guys hear between the lines there? They know the balance of power isn't with them anymore in the House. Trudeau doesn't need the Bloc to pass his bills. He can pass his bills with the 3 NDP guys or a couple of Conservatives. So what did he threaten during the campaign season? Independence. And he is getting more and more and more support, should I say, the mindset in Quebec is developing more and more and more towards independence than to maintain the status quo in the system. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter which province or territory claims their independence first. Everything goes, the board gets cleared and it starts all over again. Everything has to be renegotiated, the power structure, the voting, the borders, the currency, the taxes, the policing, military, treaties, policies. Everything starts again from zero, right? So I don't know if they're going to vote for another non-confidence vote in Quebec. I think that they're going to push forward for their own independence rather than play the games anymore, right? So, and this is really it. Our government body, Nick Frias explains it in a neat way, And it's the same holds true in America as it does here in Canada. They leverage our suffering, right? So listen to this clip from Nick Frias.
This is incredible, and I'm going to explain why. Just bear with me.
I mean, shutdowns are terrible, and of course there will be, you know, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously, but it is one of the few leverage times we have.
Okay, let me do the TLD.
The few leverage times they have is when people are suffering. Tell me which Canadian party doesn't do that, that doesn't leverage the suffering of the people for the political gain of the party.
We are on why this is bizarre. First of all, she got right out there and she admitted that suffering is being caused as a result of the government shutdown. So why would she do that? In electoral politics, that would seem like suicide, unless you think it's your political opponents that will be blamed for it. And the vast majority of Americans right now are going to look at this and say, well, if Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they don't have a budget, well, then they're the ones that shut it down, right? Well, that could be right, except for a little thing called cloture, right? Which is a term that the vast majority of Americans don't even know exists. It's a rule in the United States Senate which says you need 60 votes in order to shut down a filibuster. Republicans don't have 60 votes to shut down a filibuster. And so Democrats are using that to shut down the government. Now, why are they shutting it down? Why are they using this suffering as leverage, as she so eloquently puts it? Well, it's because they want to add things back into the budget. What are the things they want to add? Well, they want money for electric vehicles. They want money for public media like PBS. They want money to go back into DEI programs in foreign countries. Oh, and here's a great one. They want to add billions back into the budget in order to fund medical care for undocumented immigrants. So that's who's causing the suffering, and that is the reason why they're causing it. The more you know.
It's exactly the same tool being leveraged here in Canada. The NDP, the Green Party, BC, they use the suffering to leverage to gain what they want, be it, you know, EV shit, green shit, climate shit, you know, scams. It's all the same shit. Our suffering is a political tool, right? And Carney's in the catbird seat right now, where it doesn't really matter. Liv, I'm going to cover that here in a couple of minutes, right? So I've got, this is, I think, probably the longest clip of the day. I don't have very many long ones, but this one's about 15 minutes long, guys. This is from Moose on the Loose, covering what Carney... Oh, the gremlins are back. They don't like me talking shit about Mark Carney, but guess what? I'm going to keep doing it anyway. Right. So Moose has been following Mark Carney pretty closely in his antics. I think Moose has got Carney kind of figured out as to what he is and what he's about. I hope Moose gets a hold of the video that we did yesterday. You know, I know it was a 4.5 hour video, but the last 2 hours focusing on Mark Carney and Brookfield, I think that I should go and cut that out and make that a standalone video, because I think that is, if there's, you know, one video that Canadians need to see across the country, it's really that one. Yeah, I cannot keep up with the chats tonight, guys. You guys are rocking it. I am glad to see it. My eyes are just not working that well. Neither is my brain or my mouth, but it is what it is. But what was Mark Carney up to in Malaysia and China? My opinion is he's there taking orders, getting you know, mission assignments from Beijing, and lying to everybody over there. Well, I mean, is there anything that Mark Carney says that isn't a lie? We'll hear what Moose has to say.
Annually of LNG by the end of this decade.
We've got some interesting developments here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Mark Carney over in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur giving his speech at the ASEAN Asian Conference. What is he doing there? He's bragging about Canada's oil and gas. As I'm going through all this footage, I'm realizing exactly what he's up to. While he's over there, the words of Donald Trump is haunting Mark Carney. He's had to deflect them and just push them all back on Doug Ford. The implication of new 10% tariffs is still reverberating across the media. Let's jump into this. Starting off with this one, we've noticed Mark Carney, he gave his speech about the budget at a University of Ottawa, and now we've got the Liberals posting this. Young people have the power to shape future of Canada. It's quite clear if the Liberals are putting their effort into universities and young Canadians, they're worried because they know there's no future for Canadians. Buying a house, getting a job, those things are now becoming a luxury, not an essential or a right in Canada. Meanwhile, we've got Pierre Poilievre. This is a good look. He's in a coffee shop here, making some espresso.
Leave him? Make it nice and clean.
Yeah,
All right,
make it nice and clean.
Let's get it all out of here.
Pure white.
Yeah. Coming right out.
Just a little trick.
Look at that at the top.
Just a little
See,
trick.
it's flattened out. Then you've got a little bit of loose at the top.
Sometimes I tap it a little bit though.
He'll get it.
He'll get it.
Get a cup.
We're gonna get a little bit thick at the bottom.
Ah, I see.
So now it's gonna be nice.
I gotta say, this kind of bullshit really ticks me off. It's just absolute theater, trying to make him more likable. I'd like him if he had the words coming out of his face were a little bit differently. I would like him more.
And
You might not think that I'm a mangia cake. You might think I'm a real Italian with how I make the coffee. It's that good.
there you go.
Give it a taste.
Perfect.
Here we go.
Taste.
Pierre, you hired. Perfecto. Wow. Look at that. You hired. You're making got very high standards. I got
You see a guy comes in, kind of interrupts because he wants to shake Pierre's hand.
on my way around.
I was waiting to come back to tell to do that. Perfect.
This is good stuff. Pierre Poilievre, a man of the people. And this man of the people is getting attacked by the media again, because that's all they do. We've got our conservatives still united behind Pierre Poilievre. Yes, we are. No need to ask the question on CBC. It's funny, you got leftists posting these pictures of Jamil Javani with JD Vance, vice president, as if this is some sort of gotcha thing. Like, no, that's a good thing. We can have better communication with America and get a deal easier. And we've got this one here, CTV. There's a video the other day, I showed a bit of it on the channel here, and to him doing this walk and talk. This is what they're criticizing.
No elbows, and increasingly, no jobs.
And with me now is Scott Reed, CTV News political commentator. Good morning, Scott.
Hey, Renee, let's do this as a walk and talk. That looks like it's the cool thing to do these days.
Yeah.
This guy is a raging hater of conservatives. This is a guy that got caught swearing on it was a CBC a couple of weeks. He was so triggered by something the conservatives did or said. I mean, it's redundant, but this is the collaboration of the cover-up that allows Carney and Brookfield to continue pillaging our country, propping up, warm fuzzy blankets for the corruption and attacking anything else.
It was a little Rick Mercer-esque, wasn't it?
I thought, yes.
This is not unbiased media when you're having a laugh here. Scott Reed is obviously a liberal. I've got him on the board here. He's up here. So his son, you see Scott Reed's son works for the Liberal campaign. And Scott Reed, you can see him here with Evan Solomon. He down here, Minister of AI. He got fired from CBC for doing dirty art dealings. And one of those dirty art dealings was with none other than Mark Carney. I'm moving ahead. I'm going to briefly touch on this. Justin Trudeau's dating Katy Perry now. Here's a shot of them coming out of this hotel in Paris.
Happy
I like last night's shot better. Just saying.
Katy, happy birthday! Happy birthday! Joyeux anniversaire, Katy!
Cringe.
Look at this greaseball. He looks over at the media. He just had to get that look. This guy doesn't change. You can only imagine what their conversations are like. Hey, Justin, where do you want to go for dinner? Man economically and socially destroys Canada, then rides off into the sunset with Katy Perry. Yeah, not only that, goes to Paris. Who's writing the script comedy of the year? This guy's a disaster. This is Canada's biggest loser. He will go down as the biggest disgrace in Canadian history. That is if Carney doesn't dethrone him. Moving ahead, we've got Sam Cooper blowing this one wide open. RCMP bust industrial scale super lab outside Toronto. That's right. They've confiscated $10 million worth of suspected controlled substances along with prohibited weapons, chemical precursors, and a range of illegal production equipment. In addition to cash, the street candy chemicals off
discovered a pill press, firearms, written street candy recipes, flasks, chemical glassware, and other lab components. Approximately 20,000 liters worth of hazardous waste were also removed from the site. It's funny you don't hear about this stuff on the news unless you got someone like Sam Cooper posting about this. I haven't heard about this. It's almost like the media is trying to cover this stuff up. Moving ahead on the CBC, what do we see? Trump's outrage towards Canada. Super childish behavior, says U.S. Democratic Senator. Of course, the CBC's digging through and trying to find anti-Trump to post on CBC. The story they should really be running is, what is Mark Carney refusing to negotiate with Donald Trump and the Americans with? What is it that they won't touch? Obviously, one of those is the dairy cartel supply management. What else is there? Must be something else. Or is it just that? But they won't run that story. Moving ahead, we've got Mark Carney in Kuala Lumpur. We've got Mark Nixon posting this clip of Mark Carney praising his bromance with Doug Ford.
Nuclear, a few days ago, I launched with my good friend, Premier Ford. Did I say good friend, Premier Ford? I said the always entertaining, the always interesting, the always unpredictable Premier Ford. Yeah, God, sorry. I don't know why I mixed the two up, President and Premier Ford. Is that on, by the way? No.
This is our prime minister. So he likes that Doug Ford rolled out that ad. They probably worked on this together. As Mark Nixon says, you can't make this up. Doug Ford destroyed Canada's trade with the U.S. and now Carney is praising him. Those additional 10% tariffs, I don't think the steel, the auto, the copper, the lumber industry, you name it, workers appreciate it. Now, the big story coming out of Asia and the ASEAN summit is this. So Carney pitched superpower. You can see here Mark Carney looking like a buffoon. Well, all of them looking like buffoons. Mark Carney pitched Canada as a reliable trading partner with lots of natural gas and critical minerals at a meeting of Asian leaders as part of his bid to shift away from the increasingly protectionist and unpredictable United States. But when he was giving his speech, and there's a couple of them here, it's very important to listen to exactly the words he's using here. I think he may bring back Keystone. He might even bring forward another pipeline, definitely natural gas. He was bragging about that a lot, but there's a key component to it here.
Apart from that trading network that I just referenced, we're an energy superpower, unabashedly energy superpower. We have the third largest reserves of oil. We have the fourth largest reserves of LNG. We've just started our first LNG.
What a lying sack of excrement.
Shipments helped by Malaysia, Petronas, in the last 6 months. We will be up to 50 million tons annually of LNG by the end of this decade. We'll double that by 2040. So this is very large scale. At the same time that we're we have an 85% clean grid back at home. We're going to increase that by 50% over the course of the next decade, including with utility scale nuclear and SMRs. We just launched the process for the first commercial SMR in Canada. So technology that's relevant here, grid optimization, other technology. So energy superpower, one aspect. You move up the chain. We are one of the largest reserves of critical minerals. We are the largest center of mining finance in the world. So we have the resources, we have the mining finance, and we have the standards around sustainable development. It's a natural partnership with many of the countries in ASEAN who have their own reserves and their own potential.
You hear a lot of sustainable, clean grid, clean energy, et cetera, et cetera. He mentioned oil and gas as the first two things and then went through all of that.
Figured out what many of us knew. We talked about, I think you and I, even in the past, about the need for diversification. You extend that up or on into positions in AI and quantum and cyber, which are world leading, twinned with our research universities, and layer onto that in a moment of catch up, we are quadrupling our defense spending between now and the end of this decade. Much of that will be in areas that I just listed in AI and cyber. Again, natural partnerships that work with the digital economies that are being built out here.
So that's his general pitch to these guys. We have everything. Then why are we hurting so bad? Why is Canada failing so badly right now? 10 years of liberal rule, that's why. This stop is only his first of...
That sounded exactly like he could have been taking Bruce's place in the interview last night, right?
3. He's going to a couple other places. He'll be in South Korea, maybe meeting with Donald Trump, most likely meeting with Xi Jinping. And that's not the only time he talked about that. We've got another panel here. He says more of the same thing.
I chose this summit, this visit to Malaysia, as my first trip as Prime Minister to Asia for a reason. And that is, like ASEAN, Canada values sustainability and inclusivity in everything we do. And I felt as I walked in to the summit, as I said to His Excellency, that I felt at home seeing the symbolism here. We value a rules-based system. We respect trade agreements and the rule of law. We value
the rule of law. This guy's ripping us off, enriching himself with his own stocks, and talks about the rule of law. As you can see here, something I'm working on. Currently not completely functional, as you can see. A lot of these not loading, but these are Carney's stocks and the plus and minus gains over the past 6 or 7 months since he's become prime minister.
the free exchange of goods, capital, and ideas. We're a natural partner. And as one of your earliest dialogue partners, we value ASEAN as the standard bearer of multilateralism. And I just want to say a few words about how we can contribute to building that. I recognize your words this morning. We're at an uncertain time in the world. There's a shift. We don't know the new system that's going to emerge. This is more of a rupture than a transition.
There it is. There's his coin phrase. It's a rupture. So he's spewing more of the same stuff. He also mentioned one other time there that when he walked in, there was a banner or billboard that said inclusivity and solidarity. He appreciated that. It's more of the same stuff here. What it looks like to me is he wants to double down on maybe oil, but definitely gas production, and probably stick a carbon credit on it and get that carbon credit system that he has been working on. He's going to roll this out to Asia to make money off of it. Will he fire up Keystone XL? Maybe. Only if he can stick a carbon credit on it, though. He's already mentioned that Pathways project.
So is this a sort of short-term, medium-term, long-term thing? In the short term, are we going to see countries doing a lot of deals with the United States, but in the medium term, needing reliable partners? If you're going to reorganize your whole economy for trade, you need reliable partners. Yeah. So in the medium term, do you think we're going to see a world which trades a little less with the United States and a little more within regions and between regions?
I think the short answer is yes. The very fact that one of the themes of this presidency is sustainability. And there's an understanding that moving towards lower carbon energy, lower carbon manufacturing, lower carbon services, et cetera, will be a driver of competitiveness. It's good for the planet, but it's a driver of competitiveness. There's an understanding of that.
There's an understanding based on what? Where? Who? Because you'll make money from it? What he's talking about here is only sought after maybe by the far left that are super wealthy. When you have so much money that you've got all your basic needs covered, then people start to care more about the environment. That is scientifically proven. In countries where higher wealth, there's just more care about the environment, about polluting or lack of polluting. But if the basic needs aren't covered, people don't care about that. And right now, the basic needs in Canada are not being covered anymore. We're getting closer to how people are living in Africa than how people used to live in Canada. And what does he want to do? He wants to push more people into poverty.
It's not just a theme, but a lot of the discussions are around how do we build that out. That is not a priority at present in the United States, or at least it's not an administration priority in the United States. So naturally, trade is going to shift away by definition. The other reason is from the U.S. for a period of time on that. It's also shifting because it's more expensive to trade with the United States. That's what a tariff does, and that will drive some of that as well. But all of that said, the United States is the world's largest. It is the most dynamic economy. It is a source of constant innovation, and everyone, very much Canada included, is going to want to be active.
And look, you've long championed kind of sustainability in a number of roles, advising the UN, advising prime ministers, etc. Are you optimistic or about the sustainability agenda holding? I mean, the world as I see it, the backtracking of the United States has led a lot of companies to say, actually, let's slow down on the sustainability stuff. Let's slow down on the net zero stuff. Are you seeing that? Is it harder to be an advocate for net zero?
Well, this is a great question. It's sticking it to him. He is Mr. Net Zero. He basically came up with this whole scam.
Oh, I've got a different job now, which is to advocate for Canada and to manage for Canada.
It's almost like he forgot which country he was going to name there. I have to advocate for America. I mean, Canada. Took a minute to think about that, Carney.
What I think you're seeing is, and this is in terms of our approach, you're seeing a sharp move towards performance over targets, investment and action over sort of prohibitions. I referenced earlier Canadian LNG and the opportunity that's there. If we went back 5 years, there would have been a greater focus on leapfrogging from coal in the region to solar and storage, particularly. There's probably more of that that transition is going to be with gas for a period of time. Not all, there will be a number that do leapfrog. So that's an example, but that's a material reduction in emissions. It's a different route to it. Carbon capture. Let me give one other example. Canada has just under 12% of the global capacity in carbon capture, a huge number. One of the, I referenced about $500 billion of investments over the course of the next 5 years. Part of that will be in major carbon capture to decarbonize our exports of oil, decarbonizing Scope 1, Scope 2. To be clear, you can't decarbonize Scope 3.
There you go. He said it himself. That's his plan, is to decarbonize our oil and gas and then sell it over to Asia. And that way he can make big profits on the back end with this whole setup here with Stripe, him being a former board member of Stripe and an early investor in Stripe who created the Frontier program, which has created this carbon credit system backed by all these big companies here. So that's what he's doing here. They're going to be doing one of these major high integrity removals, DAC, direct air capture, sucking the CO2 out, sticking it under the ground, and then saying, hey, this is more eco and green. Why don't you buy our more expensive oil because it's so friendly and eco? This system only works if everyone agrees that this is how the system should be and everyone agrees to pay more for this. And that's not going to happen. But if he can get the system going, then he's going to get rich off of it. So he's trying to use an entire nation to do that, to further enrich himself. This is disgusting.
Again, that's performance, and that's
just going to interrupt here for a second to show you guys that I've got Moose's site, his map where he's got all of this laid out. I'm going to add a link to this in the Substack for everybody tomorrow. Anybody wants to go do some deep diving on this, you'll be able to. Oops.
Investment for emission reduction. So that's a shift. I can make one last point, which is something coming out of the region. Singapore, Malaysia, and others have been amongst the leaders here, which is actually tracking the emissions of goods and soon services. So it's going to be clearer where that performance is.
I want to note, too, what he mentioned there, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, decarbonizing oil. Scope 1 is the actual oil and gas facilities and reducing their emissions in the production of oil and gas, which can be reduced. That's why he said you can reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2. So here's a diagram. Scope 1 is this, the company-owned vehicles, fuel combustion. Scope 2 is energy consumption, heat, AC consumption, steam consumption, indirect emissions from consumption of purchased electricity, heat, or steam. So essentially, because these can't be bottled, like propane, gas, all that stuff can be, it's reducing the emissions off of anything electricity, as this stuff shows. And Scope 3 is then using the product, which can't be reduced at all because the end product. Waste disposal, purchased goods, business travel, indirect emissions resulting from activities of an organization, but not included in Scope 2. So if you're buying a fuel canister from Canadian Tire and then going out to the woods and cooking a meal out there, there's going to be no reduction on that Scope 3. He's trying to target Scope 1, Scope 2, and make these big companies pay for carbon credits, which is that system that's set up by Frontier, which is created by Stripe. And then Stripe becomes the world leader in that, having the framework. They don't make direct income off of Frontier, but they'll be the world leader in that system. They have a framework and a website. They'll become the world leader on that, where everyone will go to. They'll essentially be the linchpin in the whole system that will make huge profits off of it. That's what these guys are all banking on, which is what I have mapped out here with Stripe and these investors. Elon Musk also being one of them, early investor in the initial funding around 2011. Also Peter Thiel, who created PayPal with Elon Musk, by the way, also donated $10 million to the super PAC for JD Vance, who's now the vice president of America. He created the Founders Fund in 2008. And he's also an investor in Stripe. Not to mention Fidelity Investments, this whole network here. You got Michael Moritz, who used to be former partner at Sequoia Capital, sat on the board of Stripe with Mark Carney. Sequoia Capital invested $9 billion in Chinese tech, and this is a whole other story here. But you can see this web of people all comes back to Stripe. Carbon credits, this whole system. So as Mark Carney would like to point out, Wayne Gretzky's quote, "Don't look at the puck, look where the puck is going." That's what's going on here. The puck is oil and gas, but where it's going, carbon credits.
And how does any of this serve Canada? Anybody? Anybody got an answer? What do Canadians get? We get to deal with this kind of crap.
It is time that Canada realizes that they are on stolen land. And it's time that Canada gives it back.
So how much land, and where would that land be when you say it should be given back?
All of this land.
So the whole country?
The whole country.
The whole country. Can't even make this shit up, right? It's pretty sad when you listen to this next clip that it takes somebody that was born somewhere else to say the things that need to be said.
When people doubt the security of their homes or the durability of their investment, everything is at risk. Many of my constituents are Chinese Canadians who came to this country because it represents fairness and stability. For them, owning a home is not only a financial goal, it is a symbol of belonging and security. When I bought my first property in Hong Kong, it was under a 99-year lease. That was a system under colonial rule. You could work your whole life and still know that in the end, the land did not truly belong to you. When I bought my home here in Canada, I felt immense relief knowing that this property was mine forever. But today, as I listen to the fears in my community, I worry they are moving backward toward that same uncertainty I once left behind. That is why these issues matter so deeply to me and to so many others. A home should be secure. Ownership should be permanent. People should not live in doubt about something so fundamental. In Chinese, we often say, 安居乐业, 安居乐业, which means to live in peace and work happily. That is what people want. Peace in their homes and stability in their lives. Madam Speaker, that peace is being tested now. The Premier must act immediately to restore confidence. He must state clearly that no homeowner...
Member, just a minute. There's free latitude in terms of private member statements, but direct attacks against opposition are discouraged. So,
right.
Just like to remind you about
that.
Thank
you, Madam.
She's right. She sees this coming. Exactly this. Our politicians aren't dealing with this. They're making espresso or making deals elsewhere. And where does that leave Canadians? Well, Michelle Ferrari's got a statement on that.
So I have a friend, he has moved to the States and couldn't see a way forward for Canada and his family, so had dual citizenship and left. Came back here and he was just telling me, he's like, Michelle, I just drove through Toronto, like it's so bad here. It's so bad what we have come to accept as normal, with people scattered on streets like bodies and addiction and the crime. And he said, you know what I noticed? He goes, the bankruptcy business is for like advertised. Oh, you're going bankrupt? Call here. Oh, you owe money? Call here. He said, Michelle, like it's so bad. And you know, I hate doing these videos because I don't want to point out doom and gloom, but I also think we have to not accept this as normal. It's not normal to see people folded over in half, strung out to the point where you don't know if they're just unconscious from drugs or they've overdosed and they're dead. Like this is not normal. People going to the bathroom in public parks. You know, we have these job losses at exponential rates, and you have a government that's going to fix it, and they're not. They're just stringing you along. And you have to have hope, but you also have to have a plan of like, okay, I can't keep doing the same thing and expecting anything to get better. And the reality is the Liberals are not. They're not going to make it better. And I hate feeling like I'm just saying the same thing over and over and over again. But honestly, there are so many people out there that just still need to be given permission to change how you vote. There are still people out there, and I actually super admire loyalty. I'm liberal. I'm going to keep voting liberal. It's like I'm a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. I'm always going to vote. I'm always going to support my team no matter what. I actually admire the loyalty, but this is so far beyond that. This isn't a hockey team anymore. This is people's lives. This is your country, and this is the future of your children's life. And I'm just imploring you, if you vote liberal or you think the liberals are doing a good job, go outside. They're not. And we can't afford to lose more people to other countries. We can't do that. Canada is worth fighting for, and Canada is worth saving. And you can't keep voting liberal. It is liberal policies that have put us here, and the people who put us here are not capable of getting us out.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit. It took both parties to get us here. I 100% agree with her on the sentiment that I hate having to do these videos that are just where do you find something to where do you find hope in all of this shit? Just that we're pussies, Steve. Just, we're completely surrounded by all of this, and we are running out of everything, and people that can get out. And here's the thing: what Canada could be is worth fighting for. What it is right now, only the elbows up crowd are fighting for what it is right now. Most people are fighting for survival or fighting for a way out. Right? It has gone that far downhill, right? But I've got a little interlude of something uplifting and a little bit of levity. Now, this is what it looks like when somebody truly figures it out about communism before we look into the 5 stages of communism. Listen to this.
Okay, I just heard somebody say this on the radio. They said, if somebody offered to pay my food and my rent for the next 18 years, I would do anything for them. But I complained every time I had to take the trash out of my parents' house. Just let that sink in. Just let that sink in. I'm going to go call my mom.
This is where we're at. If somebody was offering to pay all your bills and feed you for the next 20 years, yeah, you'll do everything for them. But then they realize that's what they had at home, and they took it for granted, right? That's waking up as to the difference of communism versus reality. And when you come out of the stupor of the satanic lullaby of communism, you kind of come to that realization, right? So now this is what's going to look like. We're you guys decide here with this next clip as to which of the 5 steps of the communist genocide playbook, where are we at here in Canada right now when it comes to these 5 steps? Because this is exactly what's coming.
Millions of people lost their lives as a result of these.
Let me rewind that. I hate when that happens.
The communist regimes of the 20th century were among the deadliest entities in human history. Tens of millions of people lost their lives as a result of these regimes, who unleashed devastation in almost every corner of the globe. Many of these crimes meet the definition of genocide. Genocide is any attempt to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group in a variety of ways, including but not limited to the murder of the group's members, destroying its families, and creating conditions designed to bring about a group's destruction. Multiple communist regimes pursued genocidal policy against those who dared to oppose their revolution. In this video, we'll expose the 5-step playbook for how communists pursued these genocides. The first step in any genocide is to identify the victims. Communist regimes based their persecution mainly on ideology. Their enemies were defined chiefly as class enemies, marked out from the working class by their alleged wealth and power. Given that most communist nations were formed after revolution, the old pre-revolutionary elite was a natural target. Landowners, businessmen, former officials, military officers, and anyone else who wielded power under the old order was immediately suspect. Communists also considered organized religion to be a serious obstacle to
Landowners and organized religion. Oh, gee, not seeing any of that under threat here in Canada, are we?
the revolution, as it offered alternative ideas of morality and community to those the state wanted to create. Religious people, especially religious leaders, became a common target as a result. While communism viewed the world through the lens of class, it could not erase the ethnic and racial hatred ingrained in many societies. Communist genocides often carried a strain of racial and ethnic hatred anyway. Communist rhetoric would repackage these attitudes with an appropriate communist presentation. It wasn't that an ethnic group was being targeted for their race or culture, but because they were all actually capitalist traitors working against the revolution, the communists claimed. The long list of enemies of the people drawn up by the Bolsheviks upon seizing power in Russia demonstrates the many ways communists designated people for destruction. Within weeks of seizing power in October 1917, the Bolsheviks were drawing up lists of class enemies, who they accused of opposing the revolution. A public proclamation in late November highlighted, quote, high-ranking functionaries in state administration, banks, the treasury, the railways, and the post and telegraph offices as enemies of the people. Lists of the names of these class enemies were posted in public places for all to see. Political rivals such as the Constitutional Democratic Party were added to the lists, as were members of the pre-revolutionary judiciary and a large portion of the existing military officers. All of these targets were specifically labeled as enemies of the people and accused of various acts including sabotage and profiting from the misery of others. The Bolsheviks repackaged ethnic hatred with communist rhetoric. The communists believed they were entitled to control all of the former Russian Empire, no matter if its provinces wanted to leave. Poles, Ukrainians, and other ethnic minorities who dared to push for independence were labeled as class traitors, imperialist stooges, and capitalist exploiters who were trying to undermine the revolution. Another striking feature of communist genocides is that the victims are always identified as the aggressors. When Lenin gave a speech on May 5, 1920, to the Red Army soldiers preparing to leave to invade Poland, he blamed Polish landowners and capitalists for forcing the war on Russia. In every genocide, the regime made sure to link their victims with the hated class enemies and foreign powers. The communists saw themselves as the permanent underdog, striking back against the sinister agents of capitalism and imperialism. Even as they marched crying children to mass graves, the communists claimed they were doing their part to rid the world of bourgeois tyranny.
Now they're
After identifying
to try and rid the world of Christians, traditionalists, nationalists, and Nazis, all of those things, right? I gotta say, guys, the chats are on fire in all of the groups today. I absolutely love it. That really, really, truly helps the algorithms when you guys are chatting like this. And there's so many great comments and on things that you guys are relating to all of this that I'm going to actually have clips on a little later in the show. So that tells me that there's an alignment of process happening, which I'm grateful to see.
which groups had to be targeted, the next step was to isolate them in preparation for persecution. Communist regimes cast themselves as being the will of the people. Therefore, any victim of genocide had to be separated from the people first. This could be done physically, with deportation and exile for the victims, and rhetorically, by producing propaganda that defined the victims identified in step 1 as the other. Labels like enemy of the people and class traitor signaled that the targets were not part of the communist revolution, and therefore not of the people. If they weren't part of the people, then they didn't need to be treated like people either. A typical example was seen in Laos with the Hmong genocide. The Hmong were a minority group in the country who had mostly converted to Christianity during the period of French colonialism. During the long Laotian Civil War, many Hmong took up arms to fight the communists, fearing that a communist regime would persecute them for their faith. After the Pathet Lao communist regime seized power in 1975, that's exactly what happened. The new regime labeled the entire Hmong population as hostile, capitalist traitors, the running dogs of imperialism, as one official called them, and isolated them from the new nation. No distinction was made between actual anti-communist guerrillas and civilians, nor were women, children, or the elderly spared. Every Hmong was to be treated as an enemy. In the words of the Pathet Lao's official newspaper, the Hmong would have to be exterminated, to the last root. Thousands of Hmong fled their homes and made for the Thai border. And no doubt this was the point of making these public declarations, while those who remained were physically removed from the rest of the population. Tens of thousands of Hmong were rounded up by the military. They were taken from their land and moved to isolated rural villages, where they were made to live in poorly made shacks on land that could not support them. The Laotian government refused to provide food, and only US aid drops prevented their total starvation. Several thousand Hmong were reportedly sent to special camps in the jungles for re-education, although many would never return. This isolation also took them away from the prying eyes of journalists and human rights groups who would struggle to keep an eye on the Hmong in the dense Laotian jungles. The goal was to isolate the Hmong socially, physically, and even in terms of food supply. The Laotian government made it clear that the Hmong were not welcome and were not even considered worthy of living. In the coming months and years, the Pathet Lao would unleash massacres, bombing campaigns, and chemical weapons on the isolated Hmong communities. The groundwork for further violence and persecution, which continues in Laos to this day, had been securely laid. The victims have been identified and isolated. Now, the tools of the genocide must be mobilized to bring about its actual execution. Steps 1 and 2 primed the victims and the masses for the genocide, but step 3 prepared the perpetrators. Lists had to be drawn up, plans made, and men gathered together to execute them. This phase would often include the deportation of the target group's leadership, so that the victims would find it hard to resist when the killings began. Take the Soviet Union's actions in Ukraine as an example. Not only did Ukraine have an emerging nationalist movement that wanted to be free of Soviet control, but it was also home to around 71,000 families classed as kulaks. Kulaks were land-owning peasants who Lenin treated as capitalist traitors. Lenin and the other Bolshevik leaders believed that kulaks and the Ukrainians as a whole might resist communism, so took brutal measures to terrorize them. In August 1918, Lenin personally ordered the public hanging of 100 kulaks in the Pensa region for resisting the collectivization of farmland. He ordered their names to be widely publicized to spread fear across Ukraine.
See, Canada's plan is not to go and hang them. They'll just put them under house arrest for life. They can do communism politely, as Brenda observed. You're correct, Brenda. They think that they can do communism politely.
And discourage any further resistance. Over the following years, Soviet authorities continued trying to suppress the kulaks, with mixed success. Then, in December 1929, Stalin decided enough was enough and ordered the total liquidation of the kulaks as a class. So began the formal organization of the genocide. Soviet authorities.
What do you think that they're doing with MAID? That's exactly what MAID is. 90,000 of us. Primarily people that are vulnerable, abandoned, and full of despair. That's class. That's low class. And our government is absolutely culling them. And not just culling them, but recycling those body parts. Couldn't let that go to waste. You know, all those organ sales that can help them balance the budget. That's Canada.
He sorted the kulaks into 3 classes and planned the actions to be taken against each group. Category 1 were the kulaks guilty of actual counter-revolutionary activity and would be sent to gulags or shot. Those who did not resist but did not show loyalty to the communist regime were Category 2. They'd be deported and have their property confiscated. Lastly, Category 3 were those who were loyal to the regime and would just be deported. Such plans required the cooperation of many arms of the state. The Soviet secret police would need to draw up the names of the more resistant kulaks in Category 1. Meanwhile, local activists would be dispatched to draw up lists of Category 2 and 3 in every village. Since there weren't that many local activists, the regime dispatched a trusted party member and assigned him local peasant assistants to create a list. These lists turned genocidal rhetoric into genocidal blueprints. They would soon be used to arrange the deportation of 1.8 million alleged kulaks and the deaths of at least 500,000 of them. This desolation of the farming population soon produced a massive famine, which claimed millions more Ukrainian lives. Step 3 had led naturally into Step 4. Step 4 is the obvious one: eliminate. Having identified the enemy, isolated them from power and protection, and organized the tools of the genocide, it was time to execute it. There is probably no method of murder that wasn't seen somewhere during communist genocides. Most people will think of the direct methods: firing squads and executions of bound and frightened civilians. This was certainly the fate of millions. Deaths in forced labor camps through exhaustion, disease, or starvation was another common fate. A great many were subjected to torture from the regimes, both as a matter of policy and the sadistic whims of local officials or soldiers. Starvation, intentional or not, would also claim an immense share of the communist death toll. While many of these deaths would have been carried out by state security forces, communist powers often employed volunteer militias, drawn largely from the enthusiastic youth, like Mao's Red Guards. The demonization and social isolation of the victims in Steps 1 and 2.
Mao's Red Guards. Remember reading about that last night? Their influence on the Trudeau clan? Where do y'all think we are here?
Meant that there were usually lots of volunteers primed to hate the victims and eager to play their role. As an example, we can turn to Ethiopia. In the mid-1970s, the Marxist-Leninist Derg regime of Mengistu Haile Mariam carried out the extermination of hundreds of thousands of political enemies. The targets were drawn from a variety of designated enemy groups, including regional separatists and pre-revolutionary elites, such as the supporters of the deposed Emperor Haile Selassie. However, the primary targets were actually rival communist groups in the All-Ethiopia Socialist Movement, who were mostly from the persecuted Oromo ethnic group, and the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Party, EPRP. Having designated these groups as enemies of the revolution, Mengistu famously smashed 3 vials of blood during a speech in April 1976 as a signal to unleash the killings. This campaign of terror was known as the Ki Shibir. The Mengistu regime unleashed plenty of soldiers to do their dirty work, but they also employed civilian death squads, known as Kebele, to round up and murder their enemies. The Kebele were historically neighborhood organizations that existed long before the genocide, but the regime appropriated them as a tool for extermination. They had little training or organization. They were essentially handed rifles with the promise that they'd use them on the regime's enemies, then set loose on innocent people. The targets were usually rounded up first and killed en masse. Aside from regime soldiers and the Kebele, there were even reports of Soviet troops helping their ally by rounding up student activists to be executed. Reports of mass burnings, torture in captivity, and rape demonstrated just how diverse the horrors could be. One of the distinctive execution methods used in the Ki Shibir was strangulation by a nylon rope, which got the nickname of the Mengistu bow tie. The method was a particular favorite of the regime's chief of internal security, Colonel Teka Tulu. This method was used to execute thousands of victims, most famously the deposed Emperor Haile Selassie, who was strangled to death in his home in August 1975. As was the case with so many genocides, the killers did not keep meticulous lists of who they killed, so the scale of the deaths are open for debate. Defenders of the regime put the death toll as low as 10,000 people killed in 2 years. Most estimates go into the hundreds of thousands, perhaps as high as 1 million. The difficulty in determining the number owes in part to step 5, denial. Once a genocide has occurred, the next step is to deny it ever happened. Communist governments went to great lengths to bury any evidence of their actions. They were aware that being blamed for the deaths of thousands of innocent people would not help global communism's image. To avoid criticism or intervention from non-communist nations, and to avoid bad press for communist allies, it was standard practice to hide any evidence of the crimes. Censorship was an ongoing process. Part of isolating victims in step 2 was to silence them and stop them speaking out while the genocide was in progress. By the time the killing began, the victims were already mostly silenced. Official communist sources would simply ignore the atrocities committed and insist that any accusation of wrongdoing was foreign imperialist propaganda. Genocide denial isn't just saying the killings happened. Often, genocide denial is saying the killings happened, but embracing them as a good thing. It wasn't genocide, they say, but justice against a hated enemy. In some cases, the genocide will be said to be an improvement for the victims. The ultimate success of step 1 is convincing people at step 5 that all the steps in between were the right choice. The ongoing treatment of Tibet by the Chinese government is a complicated example of this denial. Around 100,000 Tibetans are thought to have been killed since China invaded the country in 1950. Countless more people have been imprisoned and abused by communist authorities, while the entire population lives under a system that Tibetan leaders and human rights groups have labeled as cultural genocide. Cultural genocide aims to completely destroy the idea of Tibetan nationhood itself. Through mass censorship of history, brutal suppression of Tibetan culture, and the abduction and indoctrination of Tibetans children with communist propaganda, Beijing hopes to erase Tibetan identity and absorb it into China. Naturally, Beijing denies it is doing anything wrong. To question the party's policy against Tibet is illegal in China, and foreign journalists have restricted access to the region. The primary method of genocide denial is simply to stop people talking about it. As far as Beijing is concerned, if no one sees it happening, then it didn't happen. Attempts by Tibetan activists to draw international attention to their struggle have been fought by China and its allies, who boycott discussion of the topic at international forums like the United Nations. When it is forced to acknowledge its policies in Tibet, the Chinese response is schizophrenic. At times, China will defend its policy as being justified punishment. For example, the 87,000 Tibetans killed during the Tibetan uprising of 1959 are classified as dangerous reactionaries and anti-communist bandits by Beijing, and all actions against them were therefore justified. At other times, Beijing defends its treatment of Tibet as improving their lives. They point to genuine material improvements in things like life expectancy and literacy rates, not in the Tibetan language, it must be noted, as proof that their policy of culture erasure is better for the Tibetan people. How the same policies can be both a punishment for Tibetans and a benefit for them is a question China does not allow its citizens to ask. We've seen examples of each step so far, but now it's time to put them together and follow each step through a single genocide. The Cambodian genocide carried out by the Khmer Rouge is one of the most infamous crimes of 20th century communism. Pol Pot's regime murdered between a quarter and a third of Cambodia's population between 1975 and 1979, or around 2 million people. The deaths from the genocide were the result of both the unintended consequences of the regime's disastrous agricultural policy and of direct mass killings perpetrated against designated enemies of the regime. Step 1 was relatively simple, as communists had plenty of experience with who might resist them by now. The Khmer Rouge had many of the usual targets: landowners, businessmen, and military officers who had fought against them during the preceding civil war. The Khmer Rouge also took aim at religious minorities who threatened communist control, most notably the country's Buddhist monks, who were seen as focal points for traditionalist resistance, as well as the country's small Christian minority who were seen as traitors who embraced Western ideals. The Rouge idealized the rural peasant and saw the urban population as inherently bourgeois and suspect, which got most city dwellers labeled as enemies as well. The regime famously labeled all non-communist intellectuals as foreign subversives, an ironic charge given that Pol Pot himself was educated in Paris, and even wearing glasses came to be seen as a symbol of one's middle-class status. The regime also deployed communist rhetoric against ethnic minorities, such as the Cham Muslims and the Vietnamese populations, labeling whole ethnic groups as traitors deserving of destruction. All of the victims were identified as enemies of communism and tools of capitalist or imperialist oppression. Step 2 to isolate the victims began before the communists even seized power. As the tide turned in the Civil War, the communists began mass deportations to shatter the communities that they would soon destroy. After seizing their first major city at Kratche in 1973, the communists ordered the deportation of its entire urban population, an action they repeated at the capital of Phnom Penh in 1975. In total, around 50% of Cambodia's population would be displaced by the regime. Most ended up in small rural villages, where they were kept separate from the existing rural population, while others were taken to prison camps like the infamous S-21 camp. These displaced refugees refugees, known as the New People, were demonized by regime propaganda as lackeys of the capitalist imperialists and were stripped of most of their rights and property. Physically, legally, economically, and rhetorically, the victims of the genocide were isolated, ready for their destruction. With their victims named, demonized, and controlled, Step 3 saw the final organization before the mass killings began. Deported populations were sorted into more easily managed groups. For example, the regime began separating out victims between richer and poorer, educated and non-educated, to decide who would be exterminated first. Another organizational trick was to ask for volunteers who wanted to go to better villages if they didn't like their assigned one. Anyone who did volunteer were marked by the regime as being too individualistic and not being obedient to the party's commands. By coming forward as volunteers, people in effect denounced themselves, one Cambodian survivor said. Using this infallible criterion, the Khmer Rouge rooted out the most unstable among us, those who were least satisfied with their fate. What followed for Step 4 was an entire nation subjected to atrocities that YouTube would not allow us to explain in detail. The majority of the killings were simple massacres. The victims were usually led away from the village to designated killing fields, where the perpetrators would gun them down. Massacres could take hours, as thousands of people had to be killed in one go. We will never know exactly how many massacres occurred across Cambodia, but mass graves are still being found in the jungles to this day. There were so many people to kill that soldiers were at times ordered to beat people to death with their own farming equipment, since there weren't enough bullets for everyone. On top of the village massacres and mass starvation, prison camps hosted their own horrors, as thousands were tortured, executed, and experimented upon by the regime's agents. Step 5 began while Step 4 was still unfolding. The Khmer Rouge denied that it was doing anything wrong. As well as blocking access to foreign journalists and silencing voices within Cambodia to stop word getting out, they insisted that they were only acting against class enemies and landlords who deserved death. This denial was supported by communist and left-wing figures the world over. Cambodia's closest ally was China, who provided funding to the regime to carry out the genocide and turned a blind eye to the massive death toll. Left-wing Western academics like Noam Chomsky used their platforms to deny that the killings happened and shielded the regime from scrutiny. Thankfully, the toppling of the regime in 1979 halted the killings and ensured that the regime did not have time to erase all memory of their crimes. The Cambodian genocide is one of many examples of communist atrocities, but the 5 steps we've identified could also be found in those other examples as well. Of course, it is only one way to describe how and why events happened the way they did. We should also acknowledge that each genocide had its own unique factors, like the personality of its leaders and the specific histories and geographies at play that made sure that no 2 genocides were ever identical. It's not that communist regimes all had a checklist that they all copied. Instead, these steps emerged as the natural consequences of communist ideology. Their similar ideals led to similar actions for similar goals, which resulted in a pattern of atrocity that claimed the lives of around 100 million people in the 20th century. Of course, we shouldn't forget that the 20th century has a long list of non-communist genocides, carried out for a variety of political, racial, religious, and other reasons. But understanding the unique aspects of communist genocide is a vital part of understanding the entirety of the 20th century. And with several communist governments still in power today, it may prove to be just as important to understanding the 21st century as well.
And a brand new communist country being born up here in the landmass formerly known as Canada. So, kind of disturbing reality when you put it in today's lenses, or no, it is to me, and it doesn't matter which one of the isms it is: communism, fascism, authoritarianism, globalism. They all only bring death. Right? Got a slightly different note. Oh, the gremlins are back. Got to reset. Looking at through today's lenses on that, there's a part in all of them that is the same, right? And we're dealing with them today under a different term. And that term that we use today is called, our group is called Antifa, right? Got a little clip here from Glenn Beck on
who are you?
These guys, they're doing something about it in America, but here in Canada, they still won't even admit that these guys exist. Oh, it's a non-centralized, no hierarchy urban myth, Antifa, right? Yeah, no. If you're seeing the unions and these other groups out, all the way right from Palestine to Alphabet Soup, the teachers' unions, all of them, a good portion of them are Antifa. And highly necessary to the radical left to implement communism, the illegitimate left hand of communism.
Writing checks to $1 million check. Who's cashing it? What bank? Where is this happening? Schwab is giving to just street kids? What? It's ridiculous to believe that. Antifa is a decentralized political movement with no central leadership. Antifa is a decentralized, leaderless movement, a broad and decentralized political movement. So it's decentralized and leaderless. Did you get that? They're ramming these words in through our brains time after time after time. It has to be decentralized. It has to be a lone wolf. It has to be leaderless, because the politicians, the police, the activists, and all of the other enablers know that if violent and illegal means are happening, then anyone caught helping, organizing, and funding them should go to jail. This is where the politicians, the media, and the think tanks say, that's the investigation. You just can investigate these guys, nothing else. Don't look here. Groups: Gun Club, Eugene Antifa, Oregon, Atlanta, Pittsburgh Antifa, Refuse Fascism, Jane's Revenge. Antifa is decentralized and leaderless. Well, if that is true, are these guys who don't work, are they
If they didn't have a budget, would busloads of them be able to be bussed in every major city in Canada whenever the unions or somebody wants to throw a public hissy fit and create a photo op and support the narrative that conservatives are dangerous radicals, Nazis, all of that shit that they're squealing about like stuck banshees all the time. But the interesting part of that, one of the things that they don't realize, is when they bust themselves all into, like they did in Alberta, to one of the teachers unions events here last week or whatever it was, the funny part of that is when they all gather and move, the rest of the country gets 2 minutes of peace. Funny how that works, right? Right? They got a budget.
funding all of these things? Support groups. For instance, the National Lawyers Guild. This is the legal arm for Antifa. If you've been in a riot or seen anything on TV, there are people standing on the side and they're wearing the green hats. That's the National Lawyers Guild. They openly brag about how they provide legal support to the street soldiers, but there's no organization in that, no. Next we have Antifa International. This one's kind of hilarious because the people who describe Antifa as decentralized and leaderless, you have an Antifa International. I mean, it's like BLM Inc., an international anti-fascist collective with years of experience managing the International Anti-Fascist Defense Fund and other anti-fascist projects. You have no central control, no base of operations or anything else, but you have years of experience in managing, really, funding sources. Again, who do you write the check to? This is split between nonprofits and foundations, also crowdfunding sources. Tides Foundation funds an organization called Alliance for Global Justice. They refunnel money to groups like Refuse Fascism. They also give to the National Lawyers Guild, over $1 million from 2018 to 2019 alone. Are you going to write a check for $1 million to a leaderless group that has no organization at all and just say, yeah, you guys know what to do with it? Who knows what to do with it? It's designed to be confusing and disappear. But the connections are all there. Antifa now has been designated as a terrorist organization, and it is time to turn over all of the stones. Who are
100%. And I cannot wait till they get to some of the Canadian stones, right? I'm going to change things up just a wee little bit. Before I spill the beans on what Carney's great latest victory, you know, we went in depth last night on Carney and Brookfield. Like I shouldn't say that. There's, Moose is doing great work on it. Sam Cooper great work on it. Andy Lee is doing great work on it. And thank the Two Chicks Politics for starting this latest thread of crimes that Carney and co are committing. So this is apparently actually a thing. It was a response earlier that I saw. This was published yesterday at 3:35. So before I saw it for Showtime, the House of Commons passes a motion to investigate Prime Minister Carney's finances. Who's that good-looking guy down there talking about it all in depth last night? Brookfield exposed MSM cover-up. Anybody seeing any of this in the news? Anybody? Anywhere? Anybody getting away with it from the news? No, probably not. While Mark Carney's over there, he's trying to get investment in Canada. Is this going to be one of those things like we read about in that court filing yesterday, where they sell something and then take the money and put it somewhere else and lie to the clients and the customers, right? We heard his lies about, Canada being the energy superpower. We got this, that, and the other thing. So he's over there talking about that. And then today, pop it off here before I pull it up. All right. Brookfield Corp up 6.19%. Right? Just coincidence, right, guys? Oops. Sorry. I got to do this first. This is Bruce Flatt of Brookfield Asset Management speaking with Donald Trump on a $100 billion Westinghouse deal for small nuclear reactors.
States of America, we're going to be developing energy, we're going to be developing nuclear, semiconductors, and strengthening the entire domestic supply chain. So I'd like to kick it off, right? And the first company I'd like to announce is Westinghouse, which will invest up to $100 billion in nuclear reactors to restore U.S. energy dominance. And we have the co-signer is Bruce Flatt, who's the chairman and CEO of Brookfield Asset Management. So come on up. There you go. You hold it with the president.
Nuclear reactors aren't exactly oil and gas, are they?
We're starting with the big deals. Then we have GE Vernova also.
Can anybody make it make sense? We have absolutely upside down universe. So the good thing is, I think most of the rest of the clips that I've got for tonight, believe it or not, I've got like 7 or 8 inspirational clips for the rest of the night, right after we get a reality pop from George Orwell.
In 2022, a leading newspaper published an article under 7 books that were banned for being too dangerous. Today, I have one such book, George Orwell's 1984, which was banned in the Soviet Union, faced censorship in China, and also removed from certain stores in US. That made me think, what is this book all about? I have just started reading it, and honestly, it feels way too close to today's politics. I will quote 3 lines from George Orwell's 1984 that still feel relevant today. 1984 was not a warning, it was a prediction, and here are 3 quotes handpicked by me. 1. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. In today's world, those who control media and education can rewrite our history. From algorithm to news anchors, those who control the present narrative decides which truth will survive. Number 2, reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. Reality and truth are connected, but not the same. Reality is true. Truth isn't always real. Truth is how people present that reality. When media distorts that truth, even a lie can start to feel real. In today's politics, truth often beats reality. If you're wondering how, well, that brings me to the third and final quote. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Which means, power does not just rewrite facts. It makes you doubt your own senses so that you do not verify the facts. That is how truth blurs, and when truth blurs, it is relatively easy to control the illusion, and thus truth wins over reality. Did you like this video? Grab the...
Don't believe your lying eyes, folks. Right? The last most important command of the state. All right. Next one's a little bit of an inspirational update from Ireland. Guys, they're doing something very different over there, and this is Mr. Eddie Hobbs discussing what they're doing and the impact and effect that it's had over there. I don't know if this is an effective thing, but it really makes me think.
Well, good morning. It's early on the day of the vote count for the presidential election, and it is clear that there has been a behemoth spoil the vote. This is seismic for the political establishment, which did not see this coming, just as they didn't see it coming last year during the constitutional referendum. But more importantly, it's also a massive rebuke to the mainstream media in Ireland. Just read them today. None of them saw this coming. None of them. That's because they are part of the bubble. They are taking the government coin. And what you're seeing is a disconnect between that bubble and a large proportion of the Irish people. This is a substantial problem, potentially a political crisis. It also raises significant questions about the legitimacy of this presidential election, given the way that the political process was jimmied through the local councils and so on. We all know the story at this stage. There is a huge gap after opening up between the Irish people and those that govern them. This has to do with the export of our top talent out of Ireland because they can't afford to live here or get housing here, while we're importing a qualitatively different type of illegal immigrant into Ireland over the last number of years, and all of the issues there, where we can clearly see that the political establishment, aided by the media, are simply involved in messaging. They're not dealing with the underlying problem that is so concerning the Irish people. That is the fundamental problem. And this creates a political crisis for the existing establishment parties, including Sinn Féin. All of them are on the wrong side of this, bar one or two. That is the message that is coming from the people. Spoil the vote is a rebuke, not just to the political establishment, but to the mainstream media as well. I can tell you that I will continue on in counterpoint to have a presence in the massive vacuum created by the desertion of the fourth estate. That's the mainstream media in Q1 2020. More and on. But watch this space. Watch how the shock and the analysis filters out over the next number of days across the political establishment and the mainstream media, because they are now the extreme. The Irish people have moved. That is the Overton window that I keep talking about. What is acceptable between left and right. That is after shifting. But they're so tied up in their bubble, they didn't see it coming. They didn't see this coming either, did they? What does that tell you about how we're being governed and how we're being led, and what must be done by the Irish people themselves in order to fix this problem? Because that's what must be done if we are to save this nation from the harm that is being visited upon it by the way this government is translating orders from above through to the management of the Irish people and its economy and its society. It is simply not acceptable, and the message clearly from Spoil the Vote is we've had enough of it. Enough.
That's how they're fighting back in Ireland. And it's interesting because they've got the exact same problem, the ideology from above that has captured their management. And, if I'm not mistaken, they're basically a republic as well. But that is one of the biggest differences between republics and democracies. Democracy is just ruled by the mob. And that's what Canada has is mob rule, right? So talked about this last night, that the 100% effective cure for 1984 is a 1776. Oh, the gremlins are back. Geez, I must be firing on all cylinders tonight if the gremlins are that interested in what we're doing and talking about here. Imagine that, hey? All right. What do I got next? Okay. Many of you guys will have seen this, but I want to, yes, Ireland is a republic. That's what I thought. Yeah. They have the same problems as we have, and the same controllers and the meat muppet managers, right? So yeah, like I said, I don't know if that will be truly effective here. It maybe would work better in smaller, like municipal or city elections. I just don't know. I don't know what the counter to that would be here in Canada, but it's interesting. It's interesting. At least if we're talking about that and giving it life, and people start realizing and comparing the notes. All of our countries, you could put the list of problems on transparencies, the old overhead projectors that you used to look at in school. You could take all of our issues, put them on transparencies, and they would all be basically exactly the same, right down to, different faces for middle management, but who's controlling the middle management? Same shit. They all piss in the same pot, right? And one of those big issues is murdering our own vulnerable in order to justify the mass invasion. So this is a clip some of you guys might have seen. Tucker Carlson got into it with a pro-abortionist at a university. Hey, Dion, how's my migraine? The migraine is kind of, it's there. It's the eyes that it's playing havoc on.
Tucker Carlson giving the best takedown of abortion I've ever seen in my life. That is a ritualistic, cultish practice. Watch.
But abortion is murder, obviously, and everyone knows that. It's the same ritual that every civilization ever been studied has engaged in, which is human sacrifice. Obviously, why did the Incas, and it wasn't just the Incas, it was my ancestors, the Vikings, all of them killed people in order to appease the gods and give themselves more power. It's the most crazed level of fanaticism I've ever seen. Like when I was a kid, they would say, well, you know, there's probably some 12-year-old farm worker child who got raped and she's pregnant. Like, would you say to her she has to carry the baby? And I'd be like, oh, that's so sad. I can't, It makes me really sad. And like, I don't think she should have an abortion, but I get it. Now it's just like, no, abortion is the only right you have. It's all you have. You don't have the right to keep you from jabbing a needle in your arm with some unknown poison made by Pfizer. You don't have that right. You don't have the right to say what you really think. The only right you have is to murder your own kids? That's dark, dude. Listen to yourself. That's the saddest thing that could ever happen. I mean this as a father of four. The only thing that matters is not your stupid job at Citibank. Trust me, it doesn't matter. All that matters is having children, and your children are all that will matter to you. I don't care what you say. I've lived it. I know that's true. I know 1 million people have had abortions. I don't know one who's happy about it, you know, and they're really sad about it, and it's awful.
Because it's not something that people take joy in. It's something that people do out of necessity. I think you're out of touch if you think it's a ritualistic thing.
Of course it's a ritual. How many abortions are there in this country every year?
And it's a matter of human rights, as you said, and it's a matter...
There's no human right to kill people, dude. Sorry. In fact, killing people is the enemy of human rights. The human right is to live.
Not a person.
It's not a person. Okay, it's not a person. But everybody knows it is. Why don't we show a video of an abortion? And let's see if you can sit through it. And you would feel sick to your stomach. Yeah, well, okay, maybe you liked it.
I grew up in a church that thought it would be...
No, I don't... I'm sorry I said that. No, I'm sorry. No one wants to talk about the details, ever. And the most horrific things in life, including a lot that happens in war, including transgender surgeries, definitely including abortion, it's all couched in abstract ideological terms which are designed to prevent you from facing what's actually happening. A human being is being beheaded with a knife inside a woman. And that, if that beheading didn't take place, that would be a person, a human being, who maybe would go on to lead some screwed up life, maybe wouldn't, but it's not up to us. We don't get to kill people simply because they're in the way, period. And if you can kill children who are in the way, you can kill the elderly who are in the way, and in the end, they'll be killing us who are in the way. You can't do that.
And what are they doing in Canada? But killing people that are in the way. 90,000 so far. 14.7 million is their target goal. Another short clip from Nick Frias. Question for the pastor.
So I have a question for pastors and church leaders right now, because we got a lot of people coming to church for the first time, some of it in response to Charlie Kirk's murder. We've got a lot of young men coming in for the first time in response to what's going on within the culture. And we should be encouraged by that. But the question I got to ask is, what are they going to find when they walk into your church? Because if they find a bunch of weak, feckless, mealy-mouthed men that are afraid to boldly preach the gospel or speak on the issues of the day because they don't want to offend anyone, they're going to turn around and walk out, because what they're looking for right now is strength and meaning and purpose and the truth. And unfortunately, we got a lot of churches that like to preach a boy band version of Jesus, which is quite frankly heretical. Yes, Jesus is loving. Yes, Jesus is compassionate. He is also strong and just. And is that reflected in your church. Because if it is, we have a unique opportunity to point people to the only thing that can save them and this country. But if it isn't, well, we're going to have to account for that, aren't we? So let's make sure that we preach a gospel that is worthy of the God that we serve.
I love that, man. And I couldn't agree more. I love what he said there is we have too many churches preaching a watered down boy band version of what needs to be done, and it's providing nobody strength. And where is that strength? And this message is from I believe a pastor actually, and in the U.S. And he's, I think, the kind of pastor that Nick would appreciate, speaking about his concern for America.
This one honestly worries me for the United States of America. I'll be very, very honest. A lot of people miss this. So in Matthew 11, Jesus is leaving these two cities, Chorazin and Bethsaida. If you go read your Gospels, he does a disproportionate amount of supernatural healing and work in these two areas, Chorazin and Bethsaida. But they don't, in general, they don't believe him. So then as he leaves, he says, he shakes the dust off his feet. By the way, a lot of Christians don't know this. The reason that they, quote, shake the dust off their feet in the Bible, why Jesus says this, when they do that, he's saying judgment will come on this city because of your unbelief. I don't even want to have a speck of dust from this city on my sandals because judgment will fall on every speck of dust. So when they do that in the Bible, that's what they're alluding to future judgment. So he does that, and then he says, "Woe to you, Chorazin, woe to you, Bethsaida. For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon," which were two really evil places in the Old Testament, "they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you," listen to this, "it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon," who, by the way, were much more overtly wicked than Chorazin and Bethsaida. "And you, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? Will you be brought down to Hades? For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Sodom," so this obviously, we know the story of Sodom, "it would have remained until this day." In other words, Jesus is saying these, perverse, degenerate people, he's gone, I knew their hearts. They would have repented if they saw what you saw. But I tell you that it will be more tolerable for Sodom on the day of judgment than for you. That passage honestly makes me shudder for the United States of America, because in the history of the world, arguably no nation has ever been exposed to more spiritual light and truth than the United States of America, and we have turned our back on the living God and wandered into degeneracy and spit in his face. When I read that passage, I genuinely shudder that the living Lord Jesus from heaven is saying, "Woe to you, United States of America," because if anybody else had seen what you would have seen, they would have repented as a nation and come to me. So take that to heart. This one honestly,
I take that to heart, replacing America with Canada. We've seen it. We know better. And as a nation, we're shunning it. And it doesn't matter where I bring it up. There's somebody like they have the privilege to detract, say bad things. And we keep turning further away. So who's it going to be worse for? Those that don't see it coming, or those that see it coming and choose not to? I think Canada fits that category. So this is kind of a unusual alignment for my show, but got a very interesting clip about the mark of the beast. And regardless of people's faith, they refer to the mark of the beast, which is a Christian belief, right? But this is, I think, a really pertinent interpretation on ancient languages and documentation evidence, and a different look at the real mark of the beast. And this will make your blood run cold when you think about what's going on in our streets and how far we have turned away.
You see that right there? That is the mark of the beast. So what you just saw is the oldest text of the book of Revelation, Apocalypse, right here. All you have to do is navigate to literally the Vatican Library, where they have the oldest known copy. It dates back to 400 AD. You go to page 1530 on the corner, like the upper right hand corner, you're going to find where Revelation chapter 13, the very last verses, talking about the mark being 666. Actually, that's what it looks like right there in the Greek, the original Greek. And just in case you need a refresher, this is what the very last verse of chapter 13 of Revelation says. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is, again, that's what the English says, 666, but that's not what the Greek says. You got to go to the interlinear study tool, which shows you the Greek, but that's still not what we saw in that original manuscript. There's little pen strokes missing. You know how important every single jot and tittle, every pen stroke is, right? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take what we saw in the original manuscript and I'm going to digitize it, make it look way higher quality, but I'm also going to modify it a little bit, because when you look at the original Mark of the Beast from the original manuscript in Greek, you just flip these little characters a little bit. Actually, the first and last stay the same, but you kind of flip the middle. Look what it becomes. It becomes something, it's actually a certain language, a very specific language. That is the true Mark of the Beast. Can you see it? I know some of you can. Can you see what this is really talking about? And do you see it? You can see it, right? Come on, man, you can see it, can't you? Please tell me you can see it. And where are they wearing it? Huh, on their foreheads. Interesting. You see that right there? That?
I found that very interesting, personally. You know, it's interesting to me how their flag represents the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We listened yesterday to Gaddafi. Was it Gaddafi? No. Anyway, the guy that created the Palestinian state. This is all what it's built on. See, they know our Bible, and they have used that to weaponize their people. And it's running around in our streets. All right. This one next up is, what do I got up next? This one is kind of for the guys out there. Short one for the guys. On 5 books to become a classic man.
If you want the best books, the smartest people, the best fashion, look 100 years ago. Put away your phone.
100 years ago was a pinnacle. The peak writings, shall we say.
And get yourself classic clothes and classic books, and you will finally become a man. Read, number 1, Brothers Karamazov. Number 2, The Art of War. Number 3, Walden. Number 4, The Art of Money Getting. And finally, of course, number 5, Bushido. These books from all around the world will teach you timeless wisdom. We have founded the Green Book Service.
All right, now I'm not going to play the commercial part of it, but I do agree with the book choices there. Got some people that are asking me to play that last one again. Okay, I can do that, because I know that was a lot to digest in a real short period of time. And it was Yasser Arafat was the name I was looking for. So by your request, I'm going to play this breakdown again, and again, it'll be added into the Substack tomorrow.
Is the Mark of the Beast. So what you just saw is the oldest text of the book of Revelation, Apocalypse, right here. All you have to do is navigate to literally the Vatican Library, where they have the oldest known copy. It dates back to 400 AD. You go to page 1530 on the corner, like the upper right hand corner, you're going to find where Revelation chapter 13, the very last verses, talking about the mark being 666. Actually, that's what it looks like right there in the Greek, the original Greek. And just in case you need a refresher, this is what the very last verse of chapter 13 of Revelation says. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is, again, that's what the English says, 666, but that's not what the Greek says. You got to go to the the interlinear study tool, which shows you the Greek, but that's still not what we saw in that original manuscript. There's little pen strokes missing. You know how important every single jot and tittle, every pen stroke is, right? All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take what we saw in the original manuscript and I'm gonna digitize it, make it look way higher quality, but I'm also gonna modify it a little bit because when you look at the original Mark of the Beast from the original manuscript in Greek, you just flip these little characters a little bit. Actually, the first and last stay the same, but you kind of flip the middle. Look what it becomes. It becomes something, it's actually a certain language, a very specific language. That is the true Mark of the Beast. Can you see it? I know some of you can. Can you see what this is really talking about? And do you see it? You can.
Do you see it? It's right there on all of their stuff. And you'll see it on a bunch of their flags as well, right? So, yeah. Pretty crazy, hey? All right. I think you guys are going to love this one. There's only two things to worry about. I love. Whoop. Try.
My grandma says the only two things in life that you worry about, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. If you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to get better, whether you're going to get worse. You get better, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get worse, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to live, whether you're going to die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got two things. Whether you're going to heaven, whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things to worry about. Original or extra crispy? That's my grandma said the only two things in life.
You only got two things to worry about, folks. Original or extra crispy, right? Okay, another one for now. This is a recipe for success principle. I love that video too, Diane. There's only two things to worry about, and the king has one more move, right? Okay, this one here is a it's supposedly a success recipe. It's from the Ring of Grimm again as well. But the advice that he gives here, where we're going into, I think is profoundly accurate.
26, become a nobody. If you want to rise in 2026, become a nobody. In the 20th century, you needed to become somebody to make it. In the 21st century, you need to become a nobody.
What do you mean?
Three things. Become a nobody financially. Use cash, not card, whenever you can. Buy gold, not stocks. And hold your gold in your own safe. Your wealth should not leave a paper trail. Same with number two, become a nobody with your data. The masses are feeding their personal data into ChatGPT or Grok every fucking day.
They have not yet understood the most important life lesson every criminal knows. Everything you say can and will be used against you.
That's why number three, become a nobody with your identity. Leave your phone at home and start walking. Forget who you are, what you have been taught. Go into silence, into a monastery. This can clean your soul and clean your identity.
How does it clean my identity?
Remember Kulak? He went to an Orthodox monastery for 6 months. He received a new name, Brother Seraphim. And that name is now also in his passport. He even opened up bank accounts with that name.
A new person, anonymous and safe.
Next level. If you want to be a somebody, your ego and the Suki will hunt you down. If you want to be a nobody, if you stay in the shadows, focused every day on your goals, the future is freedom. and the future is yours.
That's why I'm a nobody. Tell me that was not a brilliant little bit of advice, given the times that in the direction that we know that we're heading. Told you guys I was going to have some great stuff at the end, right? I knew I was taking everybody into the deep, dark nastiness today, so I wanted to make sure that I had some good stuff to come up with at the end, and so I've got another one here, a great clip, and this one, guys, is a great description of the awakening process. I think this is important for all of us that are, among the awakened group fighting for humanity. You're not alone, and I think that this is a good watch for all of us, and a couple more great ones coming up after this. But I think you guys need to hear this.
To all my friends out there who know what is really going on, to all my conspiracy theorist friends, sometimes it's a curse and not a blessing to be awake. In my over 45 years of behind-the-scenes invisible intelligence work, I feel compelled to share the following for your consideration. Awakening is the most liberating, alienating, excruciating, empowering, lonely, confusing, freeing, frightening, expansive journey. And if you find yourself struggling, trying to process all this insanity, believe me when I say you are not alone. No one talks about the darkness that accompanies awakening or the grief we go through, not only grieving the life and illusions that you once had, but the realization that almost everything you thought you knew is a lie. The beliefs you've held, people you've trusted, principles you were taught, all lies. Shattering illusions is never an enjoyable experience. There is a considerable amount of discomfort that comes with growth, and the grieving process doesn't stop there. With these newfound realizations, you will find yourself grieving all over again. Grieving the loss of many relationships with people who just don't get it. Feeling alone, being ridiculed and shamed, not only by the masses, but for many of you, your very own family and friends too. Feeling like you no longer have much in common with the people you're surrounded by. Struggling with carrying on bullshit, shallow conversations that lack substance with those who are still fast asleep. Even feeling disconnected from your entire support system because they can't see what you see. Some even grieve the loss of their ignorance because ignorance is bliss and reality is harsh. Awakening can be a lonely road, and you will often find yourself journeying alone. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Awakening to the realities of this world is brutal. It will have you running through the entire gamut of human emotions. You have to master the art of diving down the darkest of rabbit holes only to come out and still function in daily life. And that's a skill people don't talk about enough. Some of you are or will struggle with feeling disconnected from family and friends. It's as though they exist in another world. Please know you are not alone. And not only are you not alone, you have an entire group of like-minded folks standing with you. You may be separate, we may be separated by miles, but we are deeply connected in mind, purpose, and spirit. God loves you, and so do I. Signed, Dave. Perhaps one of the greatest pieces or greatest emails or just fantastic.
And I couldn't agree more. You guys are the best community I could have ever have been given the privilege of knowing and taking part in, right? And you're not alone. I know that I'm not alone every night. And that's what real community is, right? And I brag about you guys all the time for exactly that. All right. Now I've got a couple of public service for your assistance videos. I think that these are going to help everybody as well. So this is one simple method to solve any problem. And I can definitely this one definitely I related to. For me, there's something, you know, I have my habit that I go to do the same thing.
Go into the silence. Go and sit down quietly by yourself for 30 to 60 minutes. 30 to 60 minutes. Most people in our society have never sat quietly for 30 to 60 minutes in their entire lives. Yet I will tell you this method works 100% of the time. That any problem that you have, any difficulty, any challenge, any goal that you want to accomplish, if you'll go into the silence and sit quietly and then listen to the still small voice within. The still small voice within. This is the key. You will find that at a certain point, probably at about 25 to 30 minutes, your mind will go completely clear. And then a flow of ideas will start to flow into your mind. You'll feel energy welling up inside you. And at a precise moment, as you sit there in complete silence, your mind will go clear and wham! Exactly the answer you need will come at exactly the right time. Go into the silence. Go and sit down.
I really enjoyed that clip. Go into the silence and listen to that deep voice within. And you give it an hour. And I don't think that we get enough of that these days. All right. This is the last clip of the night, guys. Why our future is decided by our attitudes. Pretty brilliant. Kind of fits in as a final segment for the night.
This is so powerful.
Listen to me now. Your mental attitude is the only thing over which you have complete, unchallenged, and unchallengeable control. You can control it if you wish. That truth will either set you free or offend your excuses. Because what you believe, you become. What you think about, you attract. What you dwell on, you eventually live out. You say, but I've tried to stay positive and life keeps hitting me. Then I ask you, what is your definiteness of purpose? Because no man can develop a strong mental attitude without a goal so burning, so consuming, so magnificent that even failure trembles in its presence. Show me a man without a purpose and I'll show you a man who drifts. And the drifter, my friend, is always in the devil's control. But show me a man who knows what he wants, who wakes up with fire in his belly and vision in his mind, and I'll show you a man who cannot be broken. To develop an unbreakable, positive mental attitude, you must first decide exactly what you want. Believe without wavering that you will achieve it. Act daily in harmony with that belief. No excuses, no waiting for motivation, no depending on outside circumstances. Let me say something most will never tell you. The world does not owe you encouragement. The universe does not pause to comfort your weakness, but it will always reward definiteness backed by faith. When a man decides that he will not quit, that he will not surrender to negative thinking, and that his mind is his, not his enemy's, then something magical happens. He begins to attract what he needs. People appear, opportunities emerge. Strength he never knew he had begins to flood him. And failure? Failure begins to fear him. But this transformation only begins when you understand this next secret. Negative thoughts are not visitors, they are invaders. If you tolerate them, they will take over your home, your mind. If you entertain them, they will eat your purpose from the inside. And if you let them linger, they will convince you to quit on the very thing God placed you here to achieve. So you must do what I call cosmic housekeeping. Take inventory of what you think. Monitor your inner speech. And when you catch your mind drifting toward fear, doubt, worry, resentment, stop it like you would a criminal at your door. Replace it with gratitude, with faith, with the voice of power that says, I was not born to be broken. I was not created to be weak. I am made of the same substance that built mountains, that formed galaxies, that breathes through the lungs of champions.
This is...
I was not born to be broken. I was not created to be weak. Love that little clip. So that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grannies, gators, friends, family, prisoners, patrons, gremlins, hostages, and stew is everything that I've got for you all tonight. Told you it wasn't going to be a marathon tonight. If you're new, welcome to the community. We have a community, not an audience. Nothing but love in here. And yeah, be lost without you guys, right? And I know many of you guys feel the same way. So if you know where we're at, support your favorite independent journalist, whoever that might be, whoever it is that you believe in, that you trust, that's authentic and genuine, support them. If you want to help me keep going, donate at whatsupcanada.org is the best way to do that. Contact at whatsupcanada.org is the way to reach out to me, good, bad, or otherwise. And get plugged into the Switch with Wayne Army, guys. Congratulations to the new members there. You guys are going to love it. Welcome. Glad to have you aboard. We'll be doing something soon, probably the first week in the new month, where we'll get together for a hangout session again, off the record, of course, or it's not a show. We'll have a Switch with Wayne Army powwow session. Already Kim. Get plugged in on whatsupcanada.substack.com. And that is it for tonight. So nothing but love, guys. Stay mighty. Stay blessed. Aloha. I see you all. And Lord willing, we'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow. If you're new, make sure you smash that subscription button. Hit the bell. Make sure you get your notifications and give it a thumbs up and a share. And yeah, like I said, Lord willing, we'll see you here same time, same place tomorrow.